Hello everyone, and welcome to another Gear Talk. We do this every other Thursday at 5 o'clock. Every other week we talk about Gears of War, things relating to Gears of War, or characters in the Gears of War universe. Today we're going to be looking at let's make sure the Lancer doesn't fall. There we go. I just got everything set up and I put the Lancer down on my chair and I'm like, don't fall. We're good. Okay. Today we're talking about my thoughts on Gears of War RAAM Shadow. Normally towards the end of every discussion series we do every year, I normally like to talk about the game that the squad or group of characters we're talking about, what happens, or what my thoughts are when it comes to the games that are found in it, or like my reactions towards it, just off the cuff, just what I'm thinking of at the time of recording. So what I'm thinking about Gears of War RAAM Shadow that features Zeta Squad. What are my thoughts? What do I think of the game itself? The DLC we have for Gears of War 3, that's actually a prequel to the original 3 games. It takes place like 3 to 4 to 5, I think even 5 years before the events of the first Gears of War. And we talk about the characters we've met there, the characters that are introduced, and just talking about my thoughts. Now, this is the DLC that pretty much is a part of Gears of War 3. It's not as long as a normal game. We're not going to talk about the entirety of, like, the Gears of War 3 into RAAM Shadow or history or anything. We're not going to do that. We're just talking about the DLC by itself. So this video, I say this a lot, but I think this will be true this time, is going to be a little bit shorter than the other My Thought videos, which are normally around 20-ish minutes long, because this is really just an act worth of content that we get here. There's a lot in it, but it's really just an act. So let's dive in. Starting off with RAAM Shadow, I do want to say I really love the characters that are introduced in this. One of my favorite things I found throughout the entire DLC was the fact that you had returning characters, newly introduced characters, and even characters that are found in the comics that are brought into the actual game. I loved it, that being Barrick. Barrick is introduced here, his first video game, his official game-wise in the universe. We get to see him playing with him and what he's doing throughout the entire situation in Alima. It was amazing. I loved it. The chain-smoking, cigar-having Barrick makes his debut, and it was perfect. We get Alicia Valera introduced. But we also get returning characters. We get Min Young Kim. We get Tai Kaliso, and they're both back. We get to know what they were doing before the events of Gears of War and Gears of War 2, and it's really nice to see that. I love seeing both of them. I'm never the biggest Kim fan. It's just how I am. I normally say A or an A towards Kim. I don't care for him. He's not my favorite. He's not my worst. He's just Kim. But it's really nice to see him get some more shine, because we didn't get a lot of that in the first one. Tai is a fan favorite. We see him everywhere. He's in books. He has his own comic. He's got everything. So having him back, I'm not going to argue it. It's Tai. They're going to try and get Tai in the best they can no matter what. So it's always great seeing him. And of course, the one thing that everyone likes to talk about with RAAM Shadow, which yes, is the big main focus of it, General RAAM you get to play as, and you get to go through with him as he goes through Alima. When it came to this section, I loved it. It was amazing. I'm right there with everyone else. It's perfect. I can't think of anything wrong with it. You play just how you would feel like you play as RAAM. You're controlling Krill, which it's crazy to think about how powerful they are, and they're in your hands to use. He doesn't use a single rifle the entire time you play with him, which packs on the weight of he is a powerful SOB. He does not need a gun. He does not need his portable troika. He doesn't need any of that. He's got his knife, and he can just run up, grab you by the head, and just kill you. Period. It's just done. It's really nice to see, and it's nice to see that they brought in all of these characters before the original trilogy takes place, because you have to think about it. Like, in Gears of War in general, you have all of these characters we get introduced, and the majority of them do end up dead, dying, or we never hear from them again. Like, even in the current Gears of War, our main characters we've come to love, they got older. They are older. They're elderly. Well, not elderly. They're getting close to elderly. But there are some characters who, between that time, are gone, like Bernie from the books, from Gears of War 3. As far as we're aware, she's gone. Like, in between the games, age, she's gone because of the time lapse. Like, they were older, her and Hoffman, and she's gone now. And now you have it where just Hoffman is in the future, and he's not the most healthy when it comes to his ability. Like, he's mostly in a wheelchair. But I'm getting off topic. Talking about RAAM Shadow, it's nice to see these characters are back. I've said it before, and it's talked about online a lot. Zeta Squad really is seen as the group of death, or like the Grim Reapers watching over this entire one. It's a cursed group. It's a cursed squad. all the members of Zeta, spoilers for anyone who hasn't played the DLC, all members of Zeta die. And in this DLC, you get the first of them to go with Valera. Then, in the order they go, after Valera, you get Kim, then you get Barrick, then you get Ty. They all slowly go one by one. It is the group, that was the big selling point of it. The group of people who, they are dead currently where we are in Gears of War 3, but we're going to play as them, see what they were doing when they were a part of Zeta. And it's so nice. It's such a breath of fresh air knowing that at that time, because we had 1, 2, and 3. At that time, knowing nothing's stopping us from getting stories from the past we can bring in. And it's nice because later on in the Gears franchise, we get more of that. That's like the starting point right there. Because of Zeta, because of RAAM Shadow, you get games like Judgment, which is 1AE. You get Tactics, which is also after 1AE. You get all of that stuff. And it's just really, really nice to see. One thing I will say that I wasn't the biggest fan of with Zeta or RAAM Shadow, I'm going to say it interchangeably. The only thing I can say I wasn't a fan of is that it was only 1 act long. The fact that you had this story going on with RAAM as the main villain, it lost some of his grandeur of what we're dealing with in the DLC, knowing that you got like an hour or two and the DLC's basically done. Like, it's I would say at most, if you're really going through getting things, a 2 to 3 hour campaign. If you're going in there with a full, never touched it before, want to experience it, for a veteran Gear player that's played the harder difficulties, zoomed through everything, they're looking at about maybe hour and a half. But for someone who's first time going into it, wanting to experience story and everything, about 2 to 3 hours you get. So having RAAM as the main enemy, it was great. It's amazing. Don't get me wrong. RAAM is here and you're playing as him. It just loses some of that bravado that you get with like General RAAM, this SOB that just takes out all of these gears, killed Kim, which we'll touch on that in a moment too, don't worry, which killed Valera, which it comes up in the comics. He has his own comic, and you get to play as him, but in overall playtime, maybe you got 30 minutes to 45 minutes, and then it's done. I feel like if they would have taken RAAM Shadow, and this is just a hypothetical, I still think the DLC is amazing. If you were to take RAAM Shadow and made it a full game and really dived into the characters, played more as RAAM, got more of that story, I think it would have been really good. I think it would have been amazing. For instance, you have Barrick and you have Kim who butt heads a lot because Barrick being former Stranded, and you have Kim who is a by-the-books Gear, they butt heads on their beliefs a lot. Give it a full game. Full game. Have a lot of the game focus on their interaction with one another. And how you have Ty, who's basically in the background for most of this. He's basically there just because people want Ty. Have Ty more involved. Have it where Valera has to play the in-between between Barrick and Kim. Also, this is Valera's hometown. You have so much to explore with that. I feel this would have been an amazing way to have done it, making a whole game surrounding it, and just made the ending just Michael Bay-esque explosions. Like in Tropic Thunder when the explosions are going off and Danny McBride's like, Mother Nature's about to piss her pants! You know, that kind of stuff. You could have done that. You know, the DLC is still very, very good, but when you look at the story being told, there's a lot more you could have expanded on, and it would have worked amazingly well. Jumping away from the negative part I just brought up, which I'm making kind of a sandwich here, I'm not really trying to, but it just ended up that way. When it comes to the story itself, yes, I would have loved it expanded upon, but with what we got with the main RAAM Shadow story in general, how I see it is, it's very well done. With what it is, it's good. If you're looking for a story about getting from A to B with a squad of characters you know and love and extending on other character stories like Jace, this is good. It's very nice. I see why they did it too. Basically like, hey, here's a story. We finished the trilogy. Here's one more thing to tack on. Here's some DLC characters. Have at it. And that's fine. That's 100% okay. I liked it. But, you know, looking at the story with things that it builds upon, and this part I love the most. For a lore nut like me, this was amazingly done. I cannot applaud, gratify, I cannot cheer on enough when they did this. The fact that you have built upon the relationship you have, and I've gushed about this in so many videos. I've made its own video. I've talked about it in Kim's video. I've talked about it offhandedly. We've done streams involving it. I cannot help but say, when it comes to the relationship built upon between Kim and General RAAM, it is beautiful, because in the first game, and we'll talk about Ultimate too, because Ultimate really puts the icing on the cake. In the first game, you have RAAM killing Kim. In that situation, you understand RAAM is going after the heads of like battalions, squads, groups, the higher hitters, all of them in the cog. You understand that. So him killing Kim makes sense. Kim is the leader of the squad. He's going to kill Kim. Makes sense. So he does it. You don't get until all the way, you go through 2, you go through 3, you get to RAAM's Shadow, which again is a prequel. You get it where they are in Alima. Kim is leading this squad, and you have it where RAAM is in the town. And they're battling each other. At one point, RAAM kills Valera the same way he killed Kim originally. And Kim takes this extremely hard. He takes it where he wants revenge. And he tries to get it, but he doesn't end up killing RAAM. You get Ultimate Edition that comes out, which is the one that's firstly done by the Coalition. And you have it painted beautifully. There's more depth, more facial showing of like they know each other. The battle's intense. RAAM specifically singles out Kim. Not even because of the fact that he's in charge. He knows who Kim is. Kim almost killed him. We've talked about that too. He wouldn't have killed him. He understands, this dude I dealt with in Alima, this dude was foiling up some plans that I was putting together. He didn't everything went through, but his squad gave me an ass kicking, and I'm not a fan of that. And he kills him the same way he killed Valera. And it is masterfully done. You feel all of the impact. It felt like a decade worth of like putting pieces together, and here's the puzzle. It was beautiful. I could not have thought of a better way to execute it. It is, if I had to name my favorite scene in all of Gears of War, the entire franchise, the visual favorite part I love to watch the most, it is probably Kim's death to RAAM from Ultimate, because of everything that collated in creating that moment after going from one company to another, making the original death, having the DLC come out, Ultimate. It was amazing. I can't think of another way to say it. It was just done well. It was just perfect. It was perfect. Just like Homelander. Perfect. To the last minute detail. Perfect. Overall, when I think about RAAM's Shadow and my thoughts on it, again, I've loved it to death with what we've talked about. We've talked about good, bad, some more good. Mechanic-wise, it played just like 3. There's not really much to build upon or talk about with that without talking about Gears of War 3, which we're not here to do. I would honestly have to say, when I look at my tier list that I make, and I update it all the time, especially with the playthroughs going on, I update that tier list religiously for every detail where something would be. I honestly place this game from A, B, C, D, and F tier. I place this at the B tier. It's the bottom of the B tier, but there's not that many compared to all the games in B tier. Like, the only reason it is in B tier and it's at the bottom is because you do have some games that are full-fledged games that stack up higher compared to it. You have some games that are better than RAAM's Shadow. And the only reason I really place RAAM's Shadow here is because of the fact it is just a DLC, a one-act DLC. That's all it is. I wish it was a full game. If they would have done masterful writing on it, if it would have been fully done, you had all the meat in there and it didn't feel like filler, I truly feel this game, easy A tier, maybe even top of the A. Getting to S tier is hard because you have so much competition up there for good Gears of War games. But this game, if it was full-fledged, full game, easily it's an A tier. No question. But we didn't get the full one, which is fine. Again, it was made to be a DLC. It was made to give the fans something. Lore nuts like me, it was given to add on to the characters. That's what it was. And it was very good at what it did. In an alternate universe, maybe there is a Gears of War RAAM Shadow game. I would love to play it. I'm sure it would have been amazing. This on its own as the DLC, I'm not trying to compare this to something that doesn't exist. This on its own, this DLC, it's amazing. It's great. I can't think of anything wrong. Anything wrong. Anything wrong. Anything wrong. There we go. It's just very well done. Like I said, a B tier is not a bad thing. If you're looking for a DLC, we didn't get a fully fledged DLC like this. This was our first one we ever got. Road to Ruin was cut content that was basically non-canon stuff thrown in that they said, hey, here's what we were working on, we just ran out of time. So this was the first time we got, here's your big kaboom into the DLC story. We didn't get something this big and this gravitas of playing until we go all the way to 5 for Hivebusters. We didn't get it until then. Sure, we got the epilogue for Judgment, but that was basically the finishing of the story. This was a whole different story, all these different characters. It doesn't matter if it's a prequel, future, anything. We got, here's a separate story. Have at it. Hivebusters, here's a separate story. Have at it. This walked so that Hivebusters in the future could run. And I greatly appreciate the fact that we got RAAM Shadow. It was, in my mind, DLC-wise, as close to perfect as you can get. And that's going to do it for my thoughts on the Gears of War 3 RAAM Shadow DLC. Like I said, we didn't have a lot to cover here, because it is not a full game. It is just basically the length of an act, which is not a bad thing. It's just, how are you going to talk about, like, here's the entire cake, and here's the part you get? All I can talk about is this. I don't know what's over here. So, very good for a DLC. I loved it. If someone were to ask me how I compare it to Hivebusters, well, we've already done the Hivebusters series, so I place on my tier list of things, and again, it always changes, but at the moment, Hivebusters is in the A, just because it is visually amazing, the characters are very well done, the story is very well done. It's very well done. You have right here where you have near perfect, and then like one level above is, like, right there is perfect with Hivebusters. I can't think of a DLC that would beat it. So, I want to thank everyone for watching, thank everyone for making this possible, and thank the patrons for making this possible. When we come back, I know we said we'd be doing Jace's discussion with this, where this video falls. For anyone who doesn't know, last week we were going to do Jace's video. I got swamped with company. I was cooking for a potluck all week. I had so much stuff going on. I started on his notes for a semi-script, and I got all the way through the first comic series for everything canonically in order. So I'm going to try and get that done and have that ready for next time, but I figured, hey, I've got so much stuff going on. This is a really easy, quick, and I talk about this just without any notes because this is just my thoughts. So I figured I can talk about this, get it out, and then get to work on everything else right away. So again, I want to thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Later.